Hi, welcome back. Now that you have written the test cases that we discussed in the last lecture for this particular application, we will discuss in detail what test cases you should have written to cover the testing of this particular application. So we went ahead with the assumption that the application is a black box. You have the functional requirement that given an input, it gives a certain output based on the problem statement. So let's take a look at the test cases. First, you should have covered the positive test cases first. For example, I give an input number as 5 and it prints the output as 19. That's a positive test case. You're not trying to break the application by any negative test case scenario here. Negative test cases, if you don't know, are those test cases where you willingly and deliberately give some negative input to the application. Negative means not a negative number, I would say. Any input which the application is not supposed to receive, but you are deliberately giving that input to the application to make it crash or make it give wrong input and to verify that the application can handle such kind of negative scenarios. But first, you should definitely test for positive test case scenarios. So your positive test case scenario here is input number given as 5, the output expected is 19, or the input number given as 100, the output expected is 109. These test cases fall in the positive test case scenario bucket. Test for negative test case scenarios. This is the killing thing that is going to help you crack the interview. The more negative test cases you can think of, the interviewer would be happy because it's imperative and it's you have to understand that when the applications are designed, they are supposed to do something based on a certain set of conditions. But what if those conditions go wrong? How is the application behaving? So in organizations, a lot of test cases are negative rather than positive. So what could be the negative test cases for the application or the program that you were given in the last lecture? First thing, what happens if I give a negative number as an input? What happens if I give -1? Will it give me the correct output? So you might think that, how do I know that? Now, generally, when an application is designed, there is a design document for it. If that covers that the application, that might cover this requirement that the application should ignore the negative numbers. Or what happens if you give a string as an input? Instead of a number, you give ABC characters as an input. The application should tell you that it's an invalid number. It would be written in the business requirements, and after reading the business requirement document, you have to come up with these particular negative scenarios. Or even if it is missing in the business requirement document, you need to talk to the developer and inform them that, hey, after I give this negative input, the application is crashing or it's not handling it gracefully. It should tell the user that, hey, that's not a good input and that's not how the application works. So basically, a graceful message should be shown on the screen by the application. Another negative input could be try to give a floating point number, let's say 1.7. Is the application able to handle it correctly and print the correct output? That's also a negative test case scenario. Now the boundary conditions. Now the boundary conditions is something you want to check. Like let's say we know that if I give input as 5, the first output is going to be 19. What if I give 19 as an input? Will the application print 28 or 19? That's a boundary condition, right? So you should think of these boundary conditions in your test cases. And these are very important conditions, test case scenarios. Second, cover the performance-related test cases also. Put the application logic to stress test. For example, now you're just thinking about an input as 1 or 2 or 15 or 55. What if I give an input as 9,999? Will the application give me a number whose sum of the digits is 12? You have to actually give this input to the application and test it. Next, how will you automate these test cases that you have written? So the first job before automating is to have the test cases in place, and then you can do manual testing, and then someone can think of automating. So how will you automate this? Now, as fresh graduates, this can be a tricky question for you, but you can definitely answer in a way that we can have unit test cases around that, or then maybe you can have to use an automation tool which will give input as an application, read the output from the screen, or if it is dumped in some logs by the application, read the output from the logs and verify. That way you can automate. So these are the test cases you can think of. Now, one thing you have to understand is that the test case writing activity is a very exhaustive activity. There is no limit to the number of test cases you can come up. I can go on and on and on. So boundary conditions, or I can do bucketing also, right? So what if I give input number as 1, it is going to print 19. What if I give input number as 25, it is going to print 28. Now, both of these categories fall in the same bucket, right? I'm giving an input positive number and it's printing. What if I say I want to test for an input of a 3-digit number? What if I want to say I want to test for an input of a 5-digit number? If you think like this, you will have hundreds and hundreds of cases. So then you have to take a logical call that, hey, I'll check for an input from a range of 0 to 100, and maybe I'll check for an input from for any number in the range of maybe 1,000 to 1 lakh. You know, so that your test cases are not too much, but again they ensure that you are covering and testing the application thoroughly, right? So these are the test cases you should think. Now you can compare with the test cases that you have written and see what were the gaps and try to fill in those gaps. Now, one of the important skills as a tester is the troubleshooting skills. So you should be able to troubleshoot a lot. Now, by troubleshooting, I mean that when you install the application, or let's say you're trying to set up Java Eclipse project and your code is not compiling, then you have to go in a troubleshooting mode, right? What exactly is happening? Are the library paths defined or set up correctly in the Eclipse? Or let's say you are trying to run a Python program and it says certain packages not found. So your test environment itself is not set up correctly. So then you need those troubleshooting skills, right? Or another way I can put up is, how would you troubleshoot if a website is not loading? That's what an interviewer can ask you. How would you troubleshoot? Let's say you open your laptop, turn it on, and try to go to google.com. And what if google.com is not loading? How will you troubleshoot? Right. So he's trying to think and check how you can troubleshoot these kind of problems. So let's say your google.com is not loading on your computer or your laptop or your mobile. How would you troubleshoot? One thing is definitely you should check for internet. It appears to be silly, but he's actually expecting that answer. Do you have internet connection? Are you connected to Wi-Fi? If you are connected to Wi-Fi, is the internet actually available or is it down? If the internet is okay, is the URL correct? Did you miss a O from google.com? Or is google.com really down? So that's how those are your test cases or troubleshooting steps. Correct. Let's take a look at another troubleshooting scenario. What if a server is not reachable? So let's say you are in your university lab and trying to send a file or trying to ping another computer and you're unable to reach the another server. So what could go wrong there? Again, your test cases could be, is your computer connected to a network? Is there a firewall on your computer that is preventing from sending the request outside? Is there a firewall on the server that is not allowing the request to reach to the server? Right. So these can be your troubleshooting steps. So as a tester, it's very important that you think of all this troubleshooting and all these test cases. So important thing is, think of the positives as well as the negatives. What can go wrong there? The moment you ask yourself these questions, a lot of test cases will come to your mind. Now, other test case scenario writing examples could be performance testing of an application. Performance testing, you should read about it, like what is stress testing, what is load testing, why is it done, how do you do performance testing, what kind of tools are there. Because like when Black Friday deals are up on Amazon.com, or here in India, let's say it's Diwali, the Flipkart comes up with big billion a day sale. Lots and lots of users are hitting that particular application. Now they need to ensure that the application, the server doesn't go down, and that's where performance testing comes into picture. So how is the application behaving if hundreds and hundreds or millions of users are hitting that particular application? So performance testing is also one of the core or area of software testing, and it depends on application to application. Not every application needs performance testing, but if you are expecting a lot of users to use the application, then performance testing should definitely be done. And then the results of performance testing are captured in the performance testing tool. Like the final outcome is that, hey, this application can handle 1,000 users at a time. So you need to deploy this application on multiple servers if you are expecting more than 1,000 users to be hitting the application. And then a load balancer is also needed to distribute the load. So that's performance testing. Even let's take another real world example, interview example. I try to ask my users, let's say you have this Amazon app. I think everybody knows the Amazon shopping app, and there's a search bar at the top of the Amazon app, right? Now, I normally ask the candidate, can you tell me the test cases for that search bar? Right. So I think everybody knows the Amazon app. So what can be the test cases? You need to think. Let me give you some hints there. Again, as I said, there is no limit to the number of test cases. I could miss some, but here's a few pointers to you. First thing is, if you're searching for something that is available in Amazon, let's say I type a mobile, it should give me that particular drop down, that mobiles in electronics or mobiles in the mobile section, and if I click that, it should take me to that particular section. If I type two words AMO, it shouldn't give me a drop down. But the moment I type the third word, it is expected to give me a drop down with the suggestions. Right. Now another test case could be, the Amazon app can be customized and changed to different languages, from English to French, German, or any other, Japanese, Chinese. So if I give input in a different language, is it giving me the suggestions correctly or not? What if the internet is down and I'm trying to type in the suggestions? How is the application behaving there? Right. And then as simple as that, that I should be able to delete my search term and put in the new search term there. The moment I go and the search text box is empty, and the moment I touch or click there, it should show me the list of my previous searches. So I'm thinking all different angles, and the moment it shows the list of searches, if I select a previous search, click on it or touch on it, it should take me to that particular category. Right. So that is how I'm thinking here. So that was a test case scenario. There could be many other examples which can think of, but the important thing is cover the positives, negatives, the boundary conditions, performance testing during your interview. So that was about a test case scenario, and I would like to see you in the next lecture where we are going to start with the HR interview questions. So thank you and see you in the next lecture.